everybody, my name is Shibby. I'm an esports colorcaster and celestial ranked player in Marvel Rivals. And today I'm going to give you a video on the best tanks that I think you should be playing when Season 3 drops for Marvel Rivals. Now, I've done videos like this before for Season 2 and 2.5, and I'd like to say I was pretty on the money, at least with my tank recommendations. But I don't want to keep you waiting any longer, so let's just get into it. The first tank I have on this list should be no surprise to anybody if you've seen my other videos or if you just see my general opinions on the tank role. Magneto is going to be one of the tanks I recommend you playing in Season 3. Now, Magneto is going to shoot pretty much, I think, to that #1 spot. I think he was sharing it with Emma in that 1A, 1B role, but with Emma receiving even more nerfs to her DPS and her survivability, Magneto actually thrives because he got no nerfs, and some of the DPS nerfs that happened with both Iron Man and Punisher receiving ultimate charge cost increases, he actually gets a minor buff. He's going to be, in my opinion, the best tank in the game, either for solo tanking or if you want a primary tank to go along with one of your off tanks or your secondary tanks. Like Magneto, the fact that he hasn't received any changes for so long, he's actually received, I think he got a buff not too long ago. I mean, he is the linchpin for the Marvel Rivals Vanguard role. I also think that because of those Punisher and Iron Man ultimate charge increases, he can actually effectively trade 1-for-1 on ultimates. Before, Iron Man used to be able to build his ultimate up faster than the Magneto, so trading 1-for-1 was a net benefit for the DPS, as well as now with Punisher having an increased ult charge, he pretty much can never really ult if there's a Magneto available, unless he's got a bubble for himself or some sort of shielding or overhealth. Other than that, if you are trading 1-for-1, if you're getting kills with a charged up Punisher ult, that's very, very good now because you can both build it up at the same speed. Mag has realistically, in my opinion, been a top 3 tank since the game's release. He's just a very boring tank to play, and he's not really that fun, but he's got all the characteristics that you'd want out of a tank. He's got really good burst damage, right? His left click, right click, left click combo. You can animation cancel some of his stuff with like a left click, right click melee and stuff like that. His shields can be used both defensively and offensively, as well as his bubbles. You can use that for yourself if you're solo tanking, or if you do have a secondary tank, something like the Thing, Hulk, Venom, Captain America, whatever, you can allow them to play more aggressively to get some of their damage off. You can also throw it on some of your more important DPS, things like Star-Lord, Wolverine, right? I mean, there are so many DPS that get so much value out of that bubble because they want to play in your face. They want to play more frontline-esque, where they have an ability that can do a lot of damage, but puts them at risk. That bubble removes that risk. That bubble removes the ability for them to die here. So I think if you haven't already picked up Magneto, or for whatever reason you've avoided playing him, you should pick him up in Season 3 because I think by far he's going to be the best tank in the game. Another tank I have being meta in Season 3 that I think pairs very well with Magneto that I mentioned is going to be Thing. Now, the reason I have Thing becoming meta this season isn't solely due to the fact that he's getting a very interesting change where he now has the ability to dash towards enemies, and his Haymaker can now ground flying enemies or flying heroes. That's a lot of good utility, but it's more than that, right? Obviously, he has the utility when it comes to dealing with flying heroes. That's really good for somebody like Thing, who pretty much got farmed really consistently by stuff like Iron Man, Human Torch, Storm, that kind of stuff. But the fact that he can choose to jump to any enemy is very good. It doesn't just have to be flying enemies, right? It can be a Black Panther. It can be a dive character. I think with the recent uptick that we got later into the season in picks like Black Panther, Spider-Man receiving buffs into Season 3, Wolverine obviously either going to be pick ban right in Season 3 with the change that he got with the team up with Phoenix, as well as just him not really receiving too many nerfs, right? I think he got the one Feral Leap nerf that kind of puts it at a higher cooldown. Other than that, he's still going to be very good. And Thing matches up very well into dive and into Wolverine, into those melee DPS. So it's really interesting that now he has that utility to deal with flyers if needed, and he has the ability to deal with backline dive threats very, very well, like he's always been able to do. Him having more flexibility in the tank role is more of a buff than you think, right? It is just a silly, wacky change, and who knows how effective it is going to be at dealing with flyers. But if you get good with it, on top of his really good anti-dive capabilities, I think he's going to be a very good pair with Magneto, who I think is going to be one of the most picked tanks in the game. You can get really good usage out of his bubbles. If you charge in or you charge out, you have really good mobility, and coming back to your team, you got really good damage. If you can multi-hit with your Haymaker Punch, your ultimate builds up very, very quickly. And he does very good into these double shield compositions that we saw in Season 2 and Season 2.5 with Doctor Strange and Magneto. I think really you have to be conscious of the fact that stuff like Punisher is still going to be meta, Hela is still going to be meta, and obviously Phoenix, if she's not banned, she will be picked against you, and she's gonna obviously do a ton of cluster damage, especially if you've got those marks on your head and then you leap to your team and she's able to blow those up. Yeah, you could be, unfortunately, you know, causing the death of your teammates with that. So you got to be really conscious of all these picks here, but I still think Flyers are going to be played, you know, relatively consistently, just because they are anchors for some of these cooler team ups with Squirrel Girl and Spider-Man. But the fact that we've, like I said, been seeing an uptick of dive, Flyers might still be good. Who knows how much Punisher we're going to see? And even then, you have opportunities as the Thing player to play around Punisher, especially when you're paired up with a Magneto. Another big brawly tank that I see coming into the meta in Season 3 is going to be Hulk. And Hulk is interesting because Namor is receiving some interesting buffs. He's got a damage increase on his basic attack, as well as the projectile speed for both his basic attack and his right click have been increased. So we have some really interesting combos where if you like double headshot with Namor on certain heroes, you can instantly delete them, right? And with Namor being picked up, Hulk is kind of a natural pickup that you want to give him so you can have that team up with that Gamma Squid. Gamma Squid is still very good. Also, like I said, we've been seeing a bit of an uptick in dive with stuff like Black Panther and Spider-Man. I'm sure Psylocke is still going to be played a lot with that Captain America dive that we've been seeing. So I think Namor Hulk specifically is going to be a very good answer into that stuff. He also does relatively well into the melee DPS, stuff like Mr. Fantastic, Wolverine, and has an okay matchup into Flyers, right? Really, the stuff that kind of counters Namor, we'll call it, is stuff like Hela, Punisher, any like range DPS. But I think Hulk, when you throw Hulk into that situation where he can kind of pressure stuff like Punisher, he can pressure stuff like Hela and Phoenix, it kind of allows that Namor to breathe a little bit more. Hulk also plays both brawl and dive very well. He can kind of switch back and forth on what kind of playstyle he likes to play, whether it's a very dive-centric playstyle where he's pressuring healers or he's pressuring the out-of-position DPS, or it's a much more brawl-centric kind of composition where you're paired up with something like a Magneto, where you're paired up with more melee DPSs, and you just absolutely brutalize that front line, put so much damage into it that the healers cannot out-heal your damage. I love the fact that Hulk has utility with his bubbles. He can play that brawl or that dive style. He can flip back and forth. His mobility is really annoying to deal with. So I think Hulk should be seeing more play. Again, this is in couple with the Emma nerfs that we saw due to the damage, due to the survivability. I think she is just going to be naturally picked up less, which allows Hulk to slip through, especially because we're going to see a lot of Wolverine bans. We're going to see a lot of Phoenix bans. I'm sure people might still ban Emma if they think it's a problem. Human Torch, Storm, and Jeff Nato, that is still a combo that has not been changed. So Hulk will not be a thought for people until maybe later into the season when people really start abusing Hulk and abusing Namor and really getting good with his combos and stuff like that. Hulk Namor might be the designated like top 5 team up in Marvel Rivals coming into Season 3. So I think you should be, if you're a tank player, start getting good with Hulk. Start finding a Namor that you can duo with and start running these lobbies. So my sleeper pick for the tank role in Season 3 is going to be Captain America. And I know that sounds a little weird because Captain America had received some nerfs and he's not nearly as good as maybe he was in like Season 2 or even Season 1.5. But we have been seeing an uptick or a rise in Captain America Psylocke dive compositions or Captain America Black Panther, essentially pairing up Captain America with one other dive-centric DPS hero can really run lobbies and run games. It was even being played at the highest of level in Marvel Rivals Ignite to some success. So I think you can definitely pull it off in your solo queue games. A lot of people don't give Captain America the respect that he deserves when he's diving your backline or when he's terrorizing your team. You couple that with something like a Psylocke, potentially a Magic, a Black Panther, then it becomes really difficult to deal with. You are forcing the enemy team to swap to something like Thing. You are forcing them to swap to something like Hulk Namor. And again, with Emma receiving nerfs to her damage and her survivability, I think, again, naturally people aren't going to be willing to pick up Emma as a response to Captain America like they were used to, right? Emma still has her spot in the meta. I still think she's going to be very good, but I think Captain America has the ability to really rise in Season 3 as like the premier dive tank with DPS. I know that's typically reserved for Venom, but I honestly, I feel like Venom at the level that I've played at least, you know, in the Celestial 1, Eternity lobby, stuff like that, I think it's really tough to get the max value out of Venom unless you're insanely good. Whereas I think Captain America is a lot more forgiving. He's got a lot of stall potential. The burst damage is still there as long as you understand the animation cancels and the shield bash. I think when you pair up Captain America with something as lethal as a Psylocke, with something as lethal as a Black Panther, who Black Panther has always been relatively good, it becomes really difficult for the supports to deal with it if they're not playing something like Cloak and Dagger, maybe Invisible Woman or Loki. Like, there's very few supports that can reliably deal with a 2-dive threat composition like Captain America plus a dive DPS. You need peel. You are forcing a response, which is good for your team because then they can farm whatever the response is, right? You pair Captain America up with a Magneto. You pair him up with something like a Punisher, because when they swap to something like Thing, when they swap to something like Hulk, you as a Punisher player can try to reliably farm them and provide that extra pressure onto them. It's all a big kind of game of like, oh, I'm countering you with this, but then I have my DPS counter you with that. So I think Captain America is really good in kind of that full dive comp that we see with like Captain America and Black Panther or Captain America Psylocke. I think if you are a tank player and you want to play dive, drop Venom, play more Captain America. I have 2 honorable mentions for the tank role. One of them kind of feels a little silly that I want to call him an honorable mention. It is going to be Emma. Although I talked about her nerfs, I still think she's going to be a solid tank and won't fall too far down in, you know, the proverbial tier lists. She still provides a very good team up to both Magneto and Psylocke. On top of this, her ultimate still has the only silence effect in the game, and with good usage can shut down a lot of ults before they even happen. I think you really need to start getting good at comboing the Emma ult with something like an Iron Man ult or something like Namor ult, where once you get that mind control going, you drop a giant AoE DPS ult on them. Moon Knight also works very well. Once you can start reliably comboing those stuff together, you can really see the power, because Emma doesn't allow you to use your ultimate if you get caught with that beam, and the range is massive, right? It is such a big AoE that if you catch a Cloak and Dagger, if you catch a Luna Snow, Loki, stuff like that, you can kill them with the proper support. She's also still relatively good into flyers because of her beam range, and very good into melee DPS, which I think we'll be seeing a lot of with stuff like Wolverine, Iron Fist, Mr. Fantastic. Even with Mr. Fantastic receiving a nerf, I still think he's going to be relatively solid. And like I mentioned, the tanks like Hulk and Thing probably seeing more play with stuff like Namor being buffed and Thing getting all those changes. I think Emma is still relatively good into those as long as you really focus up on using your diamond form correctly. You can't be as aggressive as you used to be, but her defensive options and her defensive utility is still there, and she's still a threat to stuff like what I mentioned, the melee DPS and the dive DPS that I talked about. The other honorable mention I have is going to be Penny. Now, Penny's really interesting because I think you can only really pick her in those like really good spots, right? Certain maps on Convergence, Payload, where she can kind of just shut down a lot of these areas. I talked about Penny prior to getting her team up and how I think she's going to be really good now at, you know, locking down areas. If you think about some of these maps that only have maybe 2 or 3 lanes to go through, and a lot of them are really tight choke points, that's where you could make teams suffer and force them to either go around and go through another choke point that your team is holding, or you force them to walk through these mines. If you watch a lot of the high level Penny players, they will set up an absolute diabolical, like double spider trap setup. They'll put their mines in places on health packs. They'll put it on, you know, choke points, stuff like that. And it is really hard to break through that. And it forces the enemy team to take time and think about how they're going to go into the point. Penny is very good at wasting people's times, right? And when, in game modes where you have like Convergence and you have game modes like Payload, where time is super crucial because you don't really have a lot of it, right? You only have 4 minutes and it can go by very quickly. You may get 3 to 4 fights max, especially if they drag out longer. You may only get 3 fights. And if Penny is wasting your time on that first point, or wasting your time on that first push, because you have to go through all of her mines, you have to go through all of her spider bots, and you have to figure out how you want to set up. She's forcing you to go around maybe the long way through the choke, right? Maybe you're not able to go through the main choke point, which is the shortest, because she has that all locked down. That's where her value increases, and that's why she's so frustrating to play against, even at the highest levels. I think in Celestial and above, even though Penny has a very low pick rate, I think it's like 3 or 4%, I think she's like a 57% win rate or a 56% win rate, because all the really good Penny players know all the mine setups. They know all the good spider bot locations. They know how to force the team to do what they want. Penny is very good, like I said, at wasting people's time and disrupting the flow of Marvel Rivals because of how unique her character is and the kind of character she is. She's a lockdown point kind of character. She's a defensive minded character. And when you master those aspects of Penny and you have that in your bag, it can win you more games than you expect. thanks for watching. If you think I missed anything, I'm sorry, my Thor players, my Venom players, I fundamentally just do not think your heroes are good or are going to be good in season 3 here. There's nothing about those heroes that scream to me that they're going to be really good meta. I think they're fine if you play them, if you main them. You can definitely climb to like Celestial or higher if you want, if you're a really good main of them. But I think the tanks I mentioned in season 3 will be meta. Magneto, Thing, Hulk, right? Captain America is going to be my sleeper pick. Emma and Penny are still very, very good. Doctor Strange players, you guys are fine. Doctor Strange is okay. He is perfectly balanced, right? If you want another shield, if you like getting high value out of your Eye of Agamotto, you've got really good teleports, then yeah, play Doctor Strange. I think Doctor Strange will always provide some inherent value because of how good his utility is with his portal and how good his shield is. But there wasn't really anything in this patch specifically that screamed to me that Doctor Strange is going to be like hard meta in season 3. Let me know if you disagree or agree in the comment section. Until next time, guys. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'm going to tell you something you've heard a million times before. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on my latest uploads. I try and respond to every single comment in my video because I genuinely do appreciate everyone that takes the time out of their busy schedules to leave one, and I love interacting with my community. If you want to catch more longer form content, I stream over on Twitch about 3 to 4 times a week, where you'll get unedited versions of these videos, as well as we talk about roster moves, patch changes, as well as gameplay over there. If you care about the short form side, I post pretty frequently on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, where you'll get more condensed version of this content, as well as highlights from my stream, amongst other things. I'm also on Twitter, and all of this will be in the description box below, as well as a pop-up that will form on the right side where you can catch me on all the different platforms. I genuinely appreciate everyone that stops by on this channel and watches all my videos, and I hope to see you in the next one.